welcome back to Getting to the Top, where I interview transformational leaders about their leadership journey in hopes that we can learn something new and it can encourage us on our own leadership journey. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Dr. Sasha Sutherland. When it comes to passionate advocacy for equity and level playing fields in sports, you'll find no greater proponent than Dr. Sasha Sutherland. She is the executive director of the Caribbean Regional Anti-Doping Organization, also known as RADO. And in her role, she manages teams in the 18 Caribbean RADO member countries by ensuring that the rules, regulations, education, and testing are maintained at international standards. I met Dr. Sutherland at an event where we were both speaking, and I was absolutely blown away, not just by her passion, but by her knowledge and by her just openness about the issues that we face and what we need to do to solve them. So I was just like, I have to introduce you to this person. If you don't know who she is, we all need to know this name. So her desire to increase awareness around the issues of gender inequality and in governance and doping in sport. She does many, many things. She's a part-time lecturer in the University of West Indies Cape Hill campus sports science and tourism programs. She also serves as the director of the Barbados Olympic Association, where she's the chair of the Education Commission. She's also a member of the Governance Commission. She's a member of the National Compliance Platform for Anti-Doping in Barbados. She's a former lecturer at the Hague University of Applied Sciences International Sports Management Program. And she's a former adjunct professor and visiting scholar in sport management at George Mason University in Virginia. She holds a BSc Psychology with Literatures in English and an advanced diploma in sports management and a PhD in cultural studies. Her research interests are gender, sport, race and sport, and anti-doping in sport. And she's also a former triple discipline athlete of lawn tennis, football, and hockey. And she brings her knowledge of being an athlete, administrator, and academic to inform the world in any way that she can. But she's also a regional icon, somebody that we should really look to that would have some answers in how we unlock the potential, not just of women, but of athletes, and certainly the combination of the two. Welcome, Dr. Sutherland.
Hello, Racquel. Oh my goodness. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I need to tell my coach, Rachel, about this. And I go, hi, Rachel.
That's fine. Listen, I tell everybody all the time, as long as I know you mean me, I will answer. Because, if I get caught up on people, I'm more particular about people spelling my name correctly than I am on people calling me the right name for some reason.
Oh, no, so, we need to. Yes.
Hi. Yes. Hi. Yes. So today we're going to talk to Dr. Sutherland. Like, did you start out as an athlete? Did you always know that you were an athlete? How did this start for you?
So listen, I was not like the best athlete. I always had athletic capabilities. So I remember in primary school being in games and I would run the fastest. I might jump the fastest. You know, I was always good athletically, but I was never like this supernatural athlete where you say, let's put on a national team. Secondary school, same thing. But my aunt had spoken about getting me into an extracurricular activity. My brother's godfather was a tennis coach. And so I started playing tennis with him at around maybe 11, 12. And so I go to tennis every Saturday. He saw potential in me. He thought I could get this athletic scholarship to go overseas. But then he died just before I entered Form 5. And so we kind of lost that opportunity. So fast forward to going to the University of the West Indies, and I'm playing lawn tennis there. I learned to play football at 18 years old, and it's really in football that I realized that this world of sport existed. And so I got opportunities to travel regionally and internationally, and then I learned to play hockey because then we called it intercampus games, now UE games. And sometimes you'd have to double up in sports so that we can get the maximum number of athletes at the UE games. And so I learned to play hockey, loved it. And from there was this like, oh my gosh, we get to travel, we get to coordinate. And out of coordinating, I started learning, about sport administration and sport management. So not an international level athlete, but an athlete nonetheless, passionate and competitive when it comes to sports.
And so how did you from being this athlete at your own level decide that there was an opportunity and there, when you look at sports administration, it isn't necessarily the most gender balanced industry. So when you saw it, did you perceive any barriers, or did you just say, oh my goodness, this whole new world is open for me, I want to be a part of it, and here's how I'm going to take it on?
So my getting into sport administration was quite quote unquote natural, but there were a lot of barriers. So what happened is, as we were athletes, there was this new director of sport at the university. I went to UW Cave Hill. And when he came in, we had a number of challenges that female athletes, we're doing all the fundraisers, we're walking around in these short pants and these t-shirts selling water so that we could raise funds. And you all are putting all the money into men's sports. This is foolishness. And so I met the new director on the field a day, and we had this long conversation. And he said to me, come to my office when you can. And so we scheduled this conversation. I was in my final year at the time. And from that dialogue, I actually got a job at UWI as a program assistant in the then Office of Student Services. It would then become the Office of Sport. Then we'd have the Academy at Sport Cave Hill. And so I was a part of all those major transitions from just sport being under student services to sport taking on a form of its own, having the Academy of Sport Cave Hill. So while I was there, I started doing my MPhil and upgraded to PhD. And so, in class, we'd have all these dialogues about the different topics. So I knew John Hunt, now Dr. John Hunt, who was doing men in dance. Sparkle Ferreira, she was talking about archiving, Sam Griffin. A lot of us were, exploring different topics. Every time, we had these discussions, I would talk about the challenges working at student services, in football, etc. And everybody was like, why don't you just do your research in sport? You're passionate about it. It's a lot of gender dialogue. You're talking about the discrepancies between men and women's football. You're talking about the challenges that y'all are doing all the work, but not getting, the accolades or the opportunities. And so that's how I started to look at gender inequality in sport for my thesis, focused on women's football in Barbados, where I was at the time. And so the more I looked into it, as an athlete, you're kind of like, yeah, we're playing, but you realize that as you move from just being an athlete into administration, there are a number of inequalities that you hadn't paid attention to at that point in time. So women in leadership, not so much. Women in the engine room, however, much so. Women in support roles, lots of those. And as you go up into the upper echelons of management, you realize there are less and less females. And even where there are females, they're not taking on leadership roles. And so I think that was how I became aware of the challenges. And then when it was even my time to do administration, it was kind of like, yeah, we don't mind doing all the work. But when it's time for the leadership roles, well, we're still male-centered, we're still male-identified, we're still very much a male space. And so, there was no challenge with having women take on the supporting roles. You coordinate the travel, you coordinate the uniforms, you organize the practice sessions, etc. And even when I actually was a national team manager for women's football in Barbados, we did all the work to do what is required to get your team to success. But when it came to spokespersons for the organization, they were almost always male. And so in studying it, I recognized that there was a gender inequality, a gender imbalance in leadership in sport.
Oh, that's phenomenal. And you decided, listen, this is a space I am qualified to fill, I can take up. And so, this would have required for you a good deal of research. What what in the research was eye-opening for you apart from these disparities? And how did people receive your research when you're saying, well, look at it, you get people to a particular point and then they're not going any further. And when you look at, I see it all the time, you have more than enough women to move to the next level, but suddenly there's a complete sort of shift in terms of, like, the head of and I'm not picking on this guy, honestly, but the head of the U.S. Nurses Association is a man. Now,
Right.
99 out of 100 nurses are women. So how is it that the head of the Nurses Association is a man? It's so strange. It's so strange.
Yeah, and the equal, of that is perhaps netball in the Caribbean, where now netball is an anomaly in that you have a lot of, it's predominantly female. You have a lot of women in leadership, but in the odd country, you might actually have a male netball coach as you go higher up the ladder. But as I said, netball is an anomaly. So I can understand, the angst when you see that even professions where they're predominantly women, they're still men. So when you look at sport, for example, before women's football was a thing, women were coaching, women were, the physiotherapists, women were helping out. But as it became something that you needed to pay attention to, as they became more successful, you recognize in college sports. In the US, for example, more and more men are filling those positions. And it's kind of like, well, hey, hold on. Before y'all even wanted to look at women's sports, we were doing the work. So what is it now? And I think, there are a number of answers. One, I think that as leadership roles become more prominent, there is more competition. And because sport is male identified, you find more men going for upper level jobs. I think there's also sometimes, not all the times, an unwillingness for women to actually take the helm. Like, we want to be good vice captains. But we're not too sure if we can actually take the leadership positions. But then even where there are women who are saying, I can do it, there is this reluctance because it's seen as if women are trying to take over. And so, a number of the recommendations that came out of the thesis was, make the space, like, beyond access, you need to make leadership positions and leadership roles available to women in the Caribbean. And when you come to the Caribbean, there's some parallels happening, because a lot of women will tell you, I really had no challenge entering that space and I had support from men, and that is true. Yeah. But at the point where you're going into leadership roles and upper levels of management, you find in that there is some resistance, because all of a sudden you're questioning a woman's competence in a way that you've never questioned a man's competence before. And now women are too, we don't use passionate, but women are so emotional, and women, don't think rationally. And I'm like, but y'all see the number of male tennis players that break rackets when they play the game. Y'all see the number of men who curse at referees and disrespect the umpires when you play men's sport. Women would fall, collide with each other, blood on their feet, and they would get up and continue playing a football game because we just self-govern. So you see the challenges, but you kind of say you can't extrapolate that to all women in leadership positions, and we've seen recently a number of females lead in politics and in sport who show, okay, you don't want aggression here, women who are not aggressive, but yet you say, well, to be in politics, there's a certain je ne sais quoi that you must have, but Jacinda Ardern has shown us you don't have to be aggressive to be in politics or to be an effective leader. And so what I love is that we have all these challenges, we have all these deconstructions that are happening around leadership generally, where women are saying, we're no longer going to try to play by your rules, we're no longer going to try to be the best man for the job. How about we just be the best woman in the role? Yeah.
And I think that's so important. It's recognizing that all of the leadership that we've had to this point has led us to this place. And there are some significant deficiencies with where we are today. So we have to be willing to recognize that there is more than one way to lead, and that the type of leadership that we've had isn't essential to take us the next level where we really want to get to, where things are more harmonious in harmony with nature, where everybody has a say, where people all feel like they have a seat at the table and feel valued and feel able to bring our best selves to the table.
Yes, I agree. I'm thinking of like even my journey in sport management. And it wasn't actually another female that recommended me, right? My first boss, Roland Butcher, he's actually the first Black man to play cricket for England. So
Nice.
I felt as if, and building that relationship over the years, like our colleagues, I was young at the time, right? So it would have been my early 20s. But I think more than being a boss, he was also a father figure. Like we would have some ding-dong arguments in the office and everybody would be watching us like, you're sure you're not related? Like, you sure he's not your dad and you're not his daughter? But we were both passionate about what we wanted to achieve. I think we were unified in the vision. But I was young and I knew everything, right? Because everybody who knows you knows everything about everything.
Of course.
And I think what he did is he provided this space where I could unleash that passion, but where he kind of brought okay, so I've been in this rodeo show for a bit. I'm going to let you speak. But at the end of the day, Sasha, he used to say it in his British accent, Sasha, have you considered that there's another opinion in this room? And so for me, he encouraged the passion, but he kind of guided, okay, you want to be a leader, but you have to take things a bit slowly. Things don't work as quickly. You have to understand, the arena in which you're going to work. And then you have to kind of strategically plan how you're going to move forward. And even beyond, that was my profession at the time. I was program assistant in the office, but I was volunteering. I remember doing this course at the Barbados Association, a sports administrator's course. And I think I still have the personality, but then I was like even more passionate and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, and this is what we need to do. And so they had suggested I do the advanced sport management course. And then I started volunteering with the Olympic Association. And again, two males, Steve Stout was the then president of the Olympic Association and Erskine Simmons was the secretary general. And they were like, you should join the Women in Sport Commission. And so I joined and I was like, oh my gosh, this is how we combat this male hegemony, because you had to bring academics into it. And we're going to undo patriarchy. Well, over time, I realized male allyship is actually what got you here. And so rather than just trying to break the entire system down, what you need to do is find pathways and opportunities for women to feel like the space is also theirs until you can actually break down and rebuild a model that works both for men and women. So, when you think of leadership, oftentimes you don't realize the subtle pushes that you would have gotten may have been from people that you're actually trying to say, give me my time now. Yeah. And so I'm grateful for them in that space because they were able to facilitate how I participated, how I gained access to the training that would give more opportunities for me to participate in sport.
So, it was sort of some of the hallmarks of your career and what opened a lot of doors for you was harnessing this power and being willing to sort of call out the discrepancies that you saw and also having good allies who helped you to channel that into some of the right directions. But you also being willing in that moment where someone says, you know what, you should do this. And you were like, yeah, let's do this. I should do this, and not, it seems as though, from my perspective, no hesitation on your part to say, oh, well, no, I'm just pointing out what's wrong. I'm not necessarily the one responsible to try and fix it.
Right. So, and I think that comes, like, if I were to go back, so I have very humble beginnings, right? And I think this is also something else that good leaders need to learn to do. Be willing to share that you just haven't arrived, right? So I have always been bossy. I can say it now because I recognize that the bossiness then was just untapped leadership potential that over time you learned to channel. So I always got good reports, but my teachers would always say, Sasha talks too much. And I remember this one time in primary school, I got unsatisfactory behavior. But it was that I was just always talking. I just always had an opinion. I just always thought, well, miss, I don't understand this. Shut up, right? But again, untapped leadership qualities in me. And so as you get older, I recognize that people saw something that was good, something that was great, but then, you're in school, so we don't have time to do it for 30-something children at the same time. So I feel as if everything that has happened in life from primary school to secondary school to tertiary has led or impacted or allowed for me to develop that leadership potential. So in primary school, I went to Catholic primary school. We would do carnival activities, we do Easter activities. I was always there. I was always a part of the choir. I was always at the stadium for March Past. Whatever was happening, Sasha was there. I remember, going to university for the first time, leaving Trinidad and Tobago and coming to Barbados. I applied to do law, did not get in. And so I had to go to what I knew what to do, which was drama and theater arts, performing arts. And then I did a social science because I was advised that if the humanities part of it didn't work out, you'd have something to fall back on. But I met our humanities and education representative, Lisa Wood at the time. Her personality was 10,000 times my effervescence. We were born on the same day, so we just instantly clicked, and it was like, OMG, I see the future me. She was humanities rep. And so when she left, I was like, I want to become humanities rep. Because, you saw it. You saw someone in leadership that you thought, oh my goodness, she hasn't lost herself. I could relate, and I wanted to be a part of that. So UE, I think, is very instrumental to me. And, I don't care what anybody says about UE Hill. It is the best in 3 campuses because I went there. But I found that what humanities did, they allowed us also. It was student-run humanities society. So I was vice president, and then I was president of Humanities Society, which meant I sat on the guild, which meant we had an opportunity to interact with the leadership of the university and bring to their attention issues that, were specific to students, and you built those relationships, and then you kind of saw how they led and how they interacted with students. And then, so somebody sits up and you kind of sit up until you find yourself and you get the opportunity to do that. So I think the leadership was always there, but what I had the advantage of was people recognizing it and saying, you should do it. So it's always there. Your potential is always there. But what is great is when somebody says, you should do this because I think you have the personality for it. And my aunt and my grandmother would always say, you're going to be the first female prime minister, of Trinidad and Tobago. Kamala Pitton said. But I don't think that was in the cards. I think every haphazard experience has led to me being where I am today, and I am grateful for it. I am an academic, an advocate. I love facilitating learning opportunities for people. And then my job allows me to be myself. So not everyone can handle an effervescent leader, but I just can't take myself seriously, right? My seriousness has to come out in the writing. It will come out in the meetings. But from the time we say break for lunch, I am tackling and, asking people about where they're from and entering banter about which country in the Caribbean is the best. I live in Barbados, but I tell all of them, Trinidad and Tobago is better than Barbados. And it's fun. And you build relationship that way, because they were like, wait, hold on. You're Trini, you're living here for how long and what? So I think it's always been there, but I've had people encourage me to do it and to do it my way.
So do you then, as this effervescent, bossy girl, and that's, I must tell you, that's my favorite kind of girl. Like whenever somebody calls my daughter bossy and she's like, I'm not bossy. I was like, yes, you are. And I love it. And I love it. Don't run from it. You are absolutely bossy, and you got it genuinely from your mother. But the onus is on us to recognize those characteristics, but also to recognize that there isn't one kind of leader. There's not just a single sort of variety of leader. And some leaders are quiet, and some leaders are introverted. but the bossy girls, we definitely need to focus on them and make sure that in the same way that people saw it in us, because my report card had the same thing, Racquel will not stop talking, that we recognize that skill and we harness it, versus what normally happens is people try to suppress it and try to make you become some muted version of yourself. And I'm amazed by my ability in this very old state of my life to learn new things every day. For example, I mean, through this podcast, I certainly learn a lot, but I also, just as you were saying that there are two opinions in this room, and I thought that was so interesting, that there are things that what's the saying? It's not the things that you don't know that hurt you, it's the things that you know for sure that aren't so. So looking at how do we recognize the leadership potential of the people around us and making sure that we're harnessing not just the leaders that look and sound like us, which would be great because it'll mean that we get more diversity into the spaces that are less diverse, but also looking at how do we harness new kinds of leadership. So the quiet ones, the introverts, the ones who have that silent strength that also needs to be represented in the rooms that are there. And how do we make sure that we get more of that kind of leadership as well? Do you feel that obligation, considering that others recognized your talents and brought you along?
Oh, I think it's our responsibility, to ensure, as you said, that we have that diversity. So what I find I have learned to do, I would walk in a room and try to read it. If there's a room that I know everybody, then I'm walking in smiling, hi, how are you? My friends are like, you cannot walk more than 5 footsteps without meeting somebody new. Like, is there any space that you can go into and not? But you've learned to build relationship along the way. And I think as you build relationship and recognize people's strengths, the onus is on you to call those strengths forward when you need it. So for example, we'd be in a space now and I would say, well, yeah, I could do everything here, but Sasha, really, you cannot. So what is incumbent on you is to say, X person has an uncanny ability for this area. Pull that person forward, mention everybody's name in rooms of opportunity, and not simply because they're women, but because they're competent in those spaces. And so, I mean, where I am now, it's a nonprofit organization. People would never guess, right? Because we act as if, listen, we are it. But I would say to my boss or my chairman, I know this person who can do it. And I'm not going to call somebody's name who's going to come and mess it up for others. And so when I look around the room now, I see persons who will not go in front of camera, or I see persons who will speak in the room, but who will not speak in front of a larger audience. Or I see people as boisterous as I am. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I am at home. Or you see someone who's probably going to pass you a note, and only speak if they think it is pertinent to the conversation. And so you have to ask them, what do you think? But I wasn't born with that knowledge, right? In the same way that those men and women have said, I think you should go for this because they recognized it in me. I am still learning how to harness the potential that I see in other women, in younger women, in women who are older than me, but may not have had the grounding that I have had to say, you can actually speak. And what you say actually matters, like your point of view matters. I find that there are women who are older than us who grew up in that dispensation where children are seen and not heard, or women do not have a valid input. And so you kind of have to say, so what do you think? I'm interested to hear or to understand what your experience was like. And so, I think one of the things I've learned is that leaders don't have an age, right? Leaders are just built to lead. And so I am in spaces where I'm one of the youngest, but people think I've been around for a really long time because I've had some good mentors and some good coaching along the way. So I think, we just, at the end of the day, as a leader, you have to get the job done, and you are not the be all and end all of that job. And any good leader knows that you don't just pull people along and lead from the front, but you harness the potential of others to do it. And sometimes you lead from the back, sometimes you lead from the side, and it is just different. So I don't like to think that I have any one leadership style. I like to think of myself as democratic, but I can't be a dictator at times, especially when it's crunch time and we have to get something done. I'm like, you know what? I'll take the blame. This is what we're going to do. And there are the times where you just sit down and you say, okay, I have no clue. What do you all think? Let's go. So I think it is our responsibility to harness the next generation of leaders,
whether they be the older generation or the younger generation.
yes.
But as a member of RADO, that is a huge responsibility, global visibility, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Huh? If there is a mistake, if something goes wrong, this is something that reverberates for decades. So how do you deal with that pressure of understanding the potential reach of something? And it's one of those sad spaces where if it goes right, nobody hears anything, business as usual. If it goes wrong, then it is front page news.
Yes. So I think just to put it in perspective, so we have over 70 active doping control officers throughout the 18 member countries in the region. It's actually 112, but 70 active. And these are volunteers. So understand these people don't have to do it. We have approximately, I'd say, 20-something medical doctors who don't work as often because we don't get therapeutic use exemption cases often. We also have a board, member country reps, 18 per country, but we're also responsible for working with ministries of sport and education. We're responsible for working with international federations, with laboratories, etc. Most of the global north, what we consider global north, have paid positions in these areas. In our space, we neither have the funding nor the policies set up to make sure we're successful in that space. So I happened across anti-doping, believe it or not. I remember coming back from my sojourn in Virginia, George Mason University, and kind of trying to decide, well, what do I want to do next? What's next for me? And because I volunteered at the Olympic Association, Gail Craig Archer, I'm calling her name because every time something goes wrong, I go downstairs and I say, you are the person who has me in this. It is your fault because you called me and said you needed a volunteer, right? And we laugh about it. But when I started volunteering with them part-time, eventually I was hired as the executive assistant. Then my boss had an untimely exit from the organization, and everybody looked at me like, well, you know the work, so great. And I was like, pardon? What? Do you know what y'all are asking me to do? And so I think the transformation, because you're talking about transformational leadership, I had to grow up really quickly. Like I had to put on my big girl trousers. I had to suck it up, and I had to, I just had to get down on my knees and pray and say, all right, God, let's work out this faith thing, right? So I thought I believed in you all the time, but now it's where we really had to do it. And at that time, we had some contentious relationships with some of the member country reps. And again, the importance of mentorship and having persons to go to. My office was right next to the then president, Steve Stout. And where I was having an issue, I would go to him and I'd say, Steve, help, because I don't know how to navigate this one. And he'd be like, and he'd do this pause, but he always knew who to call, because again, it is a male-centered, male-identified, male-dominated space. So you can't come knocking doors down. Quite the contrary, you had to have advocates for you who could perhaps open a door, and then you try to do the negotiations. So over about 5 or 6 years being in the position, we've worked at mending bridges and saying, give me an opportunity. Don't just look at the organization and the position. Give Sasha an opportunity. You don't know me. Let's get to know each other. And it was rough, but now I can say,
a few of the male-led organizations that, you know, people would say, oh my gosh, I didn't know you. I was afraid of you. I'm like, afraid of me? I'm the nicest person I know, you know, and now you get to call them besties, you know. So I never call somebody and say, you know, Mr. Williams or Mr. Smith. Is almost like, bestie, I need this happening in your country. Who do I speak to? How can we navigate? And now people are willing to share. They've opened their space. They've seen that what we're doing is serving the region, and we need their partnership. We're not dictating to you. We're not telling you what you have to do, but we've built relationships to the extent that when people see the number, they're not ignoring it. They're actually picking up the phone and saying, okay, bestie, what do you need? Oh, okay, Sasha, is there an issue? Or, all right, if you're calling, it's serious. What's the challenge? And we've built that relationship over time. So being able to run a nonprofit organization across 18 countries, where everybody's a volunteer, you know, and you're saying to people, we need you to do this because our athletes need us. They believe in the vision more so than the person. And I think that's very important for leaders to understand. It's not about you. If you're really leading, you're serving, and you're serving first. So getting people to understand that our vision is to have a region that's unified and committed to clean sport first and foremost. I think every sport administrator, sport volunteer believes in that vision. And then within their spheres of influence, they then give us the opportunity to speak to a minister of sport or to speak to a UNESCO office. And then internationally, we're able to say to the international community, listen, I know y'all think we're sitting on the beach and sipping coconuts, but understand this is our reality. But when you look at our access to funding, it is very limited, but yet we're still producing. We're still trying to meet the international standards. And so even internationally, you try to build a rapport with people who think you either don't know what you're doing in the region, or our region is suspect. And so you helping to build brand equity and credibility. So when you talk about when things go right, nobody listens. When things go wrong, that phone is ringing, and I'm kind of like, oh, Jesus, help me with this one, because I don't know what to say. But it's exciting. I think I was built for it. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. I think I am purposed to be here at this time. I enjoy it. I argue a lot about why am I doing this, but I know why I am doing it. You know, I tell people my name actually means helper of mankind. And I think I'm actually walking out that purpose. It didn't matter if it was the RADO or another organization, but I think I was purpose built to facilitate athlete engagement and bringing everybody to the table and supporting our countries. And it's a role that I love.
You know, what's interesting to me, I know at least 3 Sashas, and all of them fit that description to a T. I feel like there's some preordainment in a parent naming a child Sasha, because all of the Sashas I know are absolutely some of the most helpful people I know, including the person who edits this podcast, my assistant Sasha, who is beyond amazing. And I, you know, I'm grateful for her every single day. But, you know, I love the sort of building and leveraging of relationships and using that to build not just brand equity for the organization, but building brand equity for you. So when you need to make a call and you need someone to pick up on the other side, you have that because you spent the time developing that relationship and using the relationships that you have with others to then, you know, leverage their own relationships to open doors for you until you're able to open those doors on your own. And ensuring that people buy into the vision, they understand the purpose of what you're doing, they understand the big picture, so that, again, you manage 18 countries worth of volunteers. And that is not because, well, yeah, I'm giving you a performance review, or I can hire and fire at will. It is, you do this at your liberty because you believe in what we're doing together, and you believe that what we're doing together is important. I also love the servant leadership, I think, and the fact that you can lead from any different position, because I think that's really important as well. There's so many things that I used to think were black and white that I now realize are shades of gray, and there isn't one way to do it. There isn't just one kind of leadership, and there isn't, in each moment, there is a different opportunity to figure out do I need to be democratic? Do I need to be a dictator in this moment? What does this moment require? Do I need to be leading from the side? Do I need to be leading from behind? Do I need to be leading from out front? Are you going to be out under fire and I need to take the bullets because I need you to understand that I have your back and your front, as an example. So all of these are really, really exciting lessons for us to learn as leaders, for our younger leaders. And also, how do we recognize leadership in others and how important it is? Like, if someone didn't recognize your leadership potential, we would have missed this magnificent opportunity of you coming to the forefront. So we have to now look and see whether it is, and this is the sort of first time that we're talking about it in this way. Who are some? It's not just looking behind, but looking ahead as well. To the people who who would have had just as much talent, but may not have necessarily had the opportunities. How do we look forward to leaders who might have, who may be a bit older, or the ones who are younger, or the ones who are on our side? So I love this idea of the 360 and taking 360, whether it is how we lead, how we engage, or where we find our leaders from. And it's all about taking this complete and 360 view.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think of even how you look at the people that inspire, right? And when you listen to them and their stories, I look at when I was at the university, for example, Professor Barbados, who was then going to become the principal of the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, and the way in which she encouraged those who were younger than her to be leaders. I looked at Marcia Burrows, Dr. Burrows, who was my supervisor at the time, and she would always say, it's not you, I had a daughter at that time. She said, it's because of her I'm letting you into this program. Mm-hmm. But how they were so confident in themselves. I think I've learned that along the way. If you know you're doing the work, and if you are confident in your own capabilities, there's no problem with the fact that Racquel and I are doing the same thing, mm-hmm. and she's taking the shine. Because you know what? The pie is big enough for all of us, male and female, older and younger. And what I love about millennials is that they don't have a problem questioning everything. Why not me? I believe in paying your dues because that's my generation. And I believe that's in the engine room, where you learn the organization, that you learn how things work and you get an edge there. But you also learn from persons who've come before you and said, I've been around this for a bit and I could offer advice. So, again, you have to build the confidence as a leader to say, I am not threatened if someone else gets this opportunity. I believe in my own capabilities and my time is going to come. When I was at the RADO, when I had just started, Ryan and I, forgive me for calling all these names, but I just need them to know how much I appreciate.
I appreciate that, because what we need to do is to call out the people who are doing the great work. I love that. And call them out, call the names, name the people.
Yeah, so Ryan and I started in the same position, and we'd have these ding-dong conversations about what sport needed to advance in the region and how we were going to be different types of leaders to the leaders that we were seeing around us. And in that space, we said, you know what, you just have to do the work. You just have to do it. Get the work done. And if you get the work done, the right people will understand, the right people will see you, the preparation will meet the opportunity that will open that door for you. And then when you get ahead, make sure you bring somebody along, make sure you call others in rooms of opportunity. We're not going to be that leader where let me get to the top first, and then I might send the elevator back down. Sending the elevator down is something that Nicole Hooverts would always say. She's from Aruba, and she's in the Olympic space. She's an IOC vice president right here in the Americas. And so you get to see representation. You get to see women in leadership positions. Sandra Osborne is a president of the Barbados Association, first female president. You've had Diane Henderson, right?
Yes.
On Instagram. And so you're looking around at these women who look like you, who are versions of you, who look like your mother and your aunt and your grandmother, who thought they couldn't do it, you know? And I'm saying, if my aunt had the opportunity or somebody to say to her that she could have done it, she would have been great. So we're seeing those representations now, and so it's incumbent. It is just our responsibility to bring everyone along. Be confident enough in your capabilities to say, when it's my time, it will happen. And a missed opportunity doesn't mean a denied opportunity. It might be delayed, but it's not denied.
All right. So there are some elements where I agree and some elements where I disagree. Here's where I disagree. I'll start there. When you talk about do the work and the recognition will come, sometimes it will and sometimes it won't. And so you have to be willing to put your hand up and understand what you're bringing to the table and be willing to talk about it. And I know that that is hard. That is hard, but too many women, just as you were talking about, you're seeing all the women willing to do the work and they're just sitting in the corner saying, you know what, someday someone will recognize all the good that I'm doing and come and whisk me out of here to the next place that I need to be. Guess what? Sometimes it happens, but sometimes do not wait for that night on a chariot. Sometimes the person who is going to save you is you. And you have to be willing to step up and save yourself and be willing to take yourself to the next level. That's just that's one of the things. And the other thing that I agree with, you were talking about the size of the pie and how, you know, have the confidence. And, you know, Rihanna, you're in Barbados. Rihanna says, sometimes when you don't feel a confidence, take it. Because you have the ability in you to be extraordinary. And you're not always going to feel it, but you are going to have to be the best possible version of you, because that in doing that, you have no competition. No one can be you, period.
Exactly.
So instead of focusing on getting more slices of one little pie, let's all focus on making a bigger pie. Because when we get a bigger pie, everybody has a chance to get a piece versus fighting over one slice with somebody on the side, fighting with them about being them when you should be fighting with you about being the best version of you. And earlier I was thinking about, you were saying that, you know, the rules of the engagement. And I'm amazed by my ability to learn at this stage in my life. Because, you know, you've been around the block quite a few times, been around the sun quite a few times. And so I'm surprised by how many things that I thought were absolute that aren't. For example, you know, it's always, listen, as women, we don't make the rules of the game. So we have to play by the rules of the game as it's laid. And certainly in sport, you would imagine that to be the case. But what I'm realizing is sometimes you actually have to decide, I'm not playing this game. I am playing my game and I am playing to my strengths. And these are what my strengths are. So I am going to take a leadership role within this conversation, within this relationship, within this interview that plays to my strengths, because that's what I bring. And I'm not going to let you judge me by the previous standard of what a leader is or what someone in this role is, because I bring something completely different. And you have to see me and what I bring that's new and different to this role versus, oh, well, this is how we've always done it. What we know is how we've always done it is broken. So there are new ways to do things. And I love the concept of looking around. I love the concept of making a bigger pie. I love the concept of we are not in competition at all. It is about creating this more inclusive space. I also love harness your passion and be passionate, and I hope that you find people who see that passion and help you channel it into the right spaces. But also to call the names of people in rooms of opportunity. Oh, there's nothing better than that. And I see why you have been able to get the relationships that you have, because you're so open and sharing and willing to do that, to say, listen, I'm going to call the people who helped me. I'm going to make sure that their names are heard, because in that way, we make sure that doors open for them. Oh, and one other thing that you said to me that I thought was absolutely mind blowing, that you had originally wanted to be an attorney. I'm like, what a horrible loss that I thank God you never got in. And then sometimes looking at these potential barriers as future opportunities.
Yeah.
We don't need any more. I mean, forgive me for all of the people who are still studying law, right? We don't need any more lawyers. We need more extraordinary women like you. And so it is like understanding that and sometimes it hurts, right? Sometimes, a door is closed and you think, oh my gosh, all is lost. But that's an opportunity waiting for you. That's something even bigger, opening up somewhere else and minimizing the time you spend looking at the closed doors so that you can see the new opportunities that open up.
Definitely. And something you just said about previous versions of ourselves, I think, it's important to leave the table when respect is no longer being served. That's not original. I've heard that somewhere. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is so important. Believing in yourself enough that you can get up and say, you know what, let's just agree to disagree. I'm going to leave now, move away. Because it's not just about money, right? It's about self-respect.
No.
It's about knowing that you are here for a purpose. And if you guys want to work it that way, I have left a space for 3 years. 3 years, because I thought, you know what, y'all are taking my ideas. So and using it as your own. And I'm no longer willing to do that because I have worked hard to get here. And so I left and then decided to come back in a new role. And now I am loving it. So I think you have to also know when to leave a situation, as you said before, whether it's a relationship, a company, when respect is no longer being served. And one of the other things I kind of wanted to speak to today is that it's okay not to be okay as leaders. I find oftentimes we talk about our limitations. And I mean, just really quickly, in 2020, I was pregnant with a twin, had severe preeclampsia, had to be rushed to the US. We lost one of the girls a few days later, spent about 7 months in the US with her in the NICU, and then a few other months because then you have the ash fall in Barbados, etc. And I heard very little from my organization. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be out of a job. The international agency, people reached out, how are you? If you need anything, let us know. But I felt as if that was just patronizing. If you need anything, but we really don't have the time. And they said, we're going to rally around you. And when you come back, it's going to be okay. Racquel, I could never have imagined that the relationships I had built with our board members then would be so instrumental in me being welcomed back into the organization. I thought it would have been strained relationships. And so when I came back out to work in 2021, I believe, I was out almost a year and then still flying back and forth with the surviving twin. They would just say, you do what you need to do. We see the work is getting done. And, oftentimes we think organizations are so mercenary, etc. Let me tell you, people make organizations, right? And there are people who actually see the work. So it is okay to leave when respect is not being served. And I could say that with confidence now, because at our last face-to-face AGM, my chairman, I'm not going to call your name, but he presented me with this coffee cup because I'm always drinking tea, right? And he just had like most inspirational person in 2022. And they were basically saying, you were sick, we still don't know your health challenges, but you have shown commitment to this organization and we appreciate it. They couldn't give me, a villa on a coast, but even that was just enough to say, your contribution matters. And I feel like we need to tell people it is okay not to be okay, because we often think that leaders, have to be strong and tough and they're never weak. And that's not true. And sometimes when, I'm not saying show that you're weak every week, have a headache or no, but I think it's okay to say to people, I'm going through something and I need time. and it's okay to not be okay and to do what you can and then come back even stronger. So just wanted to add that on as well. That's a part of leadership, to show I'm not infallible.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's a beautiful note to end on, because, you know, at the end of the day, it is our humanity, and we have to recognize that there is no infallibility, there is no superhumanness. It is just all of us leading from our own perspectives and getting the best out of this life that we have. So with that, I want to thank you, Dr. Sutherland, for spending this time with me. Thank you all for listening. And if you're not already subscribed to Getting to the Top, please do. You can find it wherever you find your podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And so thank you for spending this time with us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.